Okay, great. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Some people are already here. I'm sure we'll get some more people as they come along. Uh, but before we kind of jump in, my name is Jeremy Miller. I'm with the Disaster Aware team, and I'll be having a conversation with our friend Jeff Dean here, who I will introduce shortly, um, at Databricks. And really, we're gonna have a conversation today. This is a presentation per se. I just think that Jeff is an incredibly interesting person, an experienced professional in the industry. I'll let him introduce himself. But first, I want to say Happy Veterans Day, Jeff, a little early. But
Thank you.
as a veteran of our military, obviously I thank you, and I'm sure everybody else does as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jeff Dean, Senior Director of Physical Security Employee Safety at Databricks. If you want to go ahead and share a little bit about yourself, Jeff.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for joining. As it states here, I started my career as in counterintelligence, and reflecting back on that, I'm going to date myself a bit. It's actually 40 years ago this month that I was a young sergeant in the Marine Corps, and I transferred my occupational specialty over to counterintelligence. And it was probably the best move I could have made. 40 years ago, when I started in the counterintelligence field, it really opened up a lot of different things to me around security and how I reflect on how to build out security programs to protect assets. It really gave me the perspective of the adversary, looking at what are the objectives. So through my career, that's how I've approached things, as the adversary, looking at objectives. And over the 40 years, if you think back 40 years ago, I started security when there was no internet. We were just getting into computers. And having lived in the security industry since then, there has been much that had to evolve as the internet got involved with companies, and companies were expanding more internationally. Employees were moving in different locations. Because of that connectivity, really had to adapt to different things. One of the biggest things we had to adapt to is the introduction to cybersecurity. And we kind of, those of us that are not in the cybersecurity role kind of took second seat. And that can still be prevalent today. So it really taught me how to adapt to that and how to do more with less, and how to look at things differently, and how to be able to sell the services that we provide. So tools that we use are very important to us into being able to address those risks, even though we may have to do, and that we are doing more with less. So 40 years into my career right now in security, and I have been blessed to have worked in many different industries and met many great people. And I'm just pleased to be here today. So thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I think everybody will really enjoy your perspective. Um, and just to kind of frame, what we'll be talking about today, as Jeff kind of alluded to, the business continuity, resilience, safety, physical security space is always evolving. Clearly, we're living in different times, but we kind of want to talk a little bit about, what does that kind of look like in terms of how your roles and responsibilities, Jeff, and maybe even your peers are starting to change again. You've had to adapt throughout the years, but I'm assuming you have to continuously adapt because of the threats and all the different things that are happening around the world. Um, I think in some ways, when I talk to professionals throughout the industry, business continuity and resilience aren't necessarily always well-known terms. Maybe they're also not even really well-known as a strategic function within an organization. So I think we probably need to talk a little bit about what that really is, and is it being redefined in terms of what people need to be thinking about. And I know we've talked about things like, are you applying a local strategy internationally? Or, are you really thinking about the complete picture as it comes to threats and hazards around the world? And then finally, without focusing too much on what we do at Disaster Aware, what are the best practices and resources that any individual who cares about either protecting themselves and their family, their coworkers, their businesses, their employees, how can they think about this, and where can they go to get the right information to maybe help them enhance their understanding uh, um, of this area? And before we just jump in, just real quick, some housekeeping. Please ask questions throughout. Emily is with me moderating, so she will be checking the chat for questions, and we're happy to answer them throughout the discussion as opposed to waiting to the end. This is a conversation, and I think Jeff and I would be happy to jump in. As I mentioned, this is recorded. We will be posting a final recording after an edit. And we will send out an email once that is ready. And then finally, obviously, in any kind of format like this, these opinions that we express here today are of our own and should be not regarded as official statements from any interested party that we may be discussing. And so with that, I kind of want to get into kind of like the first question, Jeff, which is, you've talked to me about how, you have new vulnerabilities and threats occurring throughout the world, and you're starting to think differently about how you might strategize to help your business operate through those. What are some of the new things that you're starting to do and think about as you educate your executive team and as you think about how you're going to deploy these strategies? And if we want, I have the tool pulled up. We can pull up certain reports and focus on certain things if it's relevant to any areas you want to respond to.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Jeremy. The thing is about security and being in the field as long as I have is, it has evolved. It used to be the old gates, guns, and guards, and look where we have evolved to now, where we're responsible for international operations. We're responsible for employees that are now scattered around the world. And if you look at some of the events that recently occurred with the pandemic and how employees did go remote, and a lot of companies are allowing that remote. A lot of companies are hiring in areas that we were unfamiliar with in the past. We're operating in areas that are high risk. There's a lot of things that we have to look at beyond just the old gate, guns, and guards. The focus used to be on facilities, and in lots of cases, it was U.S. centric or U.S. focused, where companies were international. The focus was always seemed to have been U.S. Now that has truly changed, and as I looked at security over the years, I tried to look at what is actually the intent of it, and that's where I consider what I call my organizational resilience program as the nucleus of what I do or what my team does. Security is really about organizational resilience, and we've adopted the motto of enabling business. When somebody says to me, "What does your team do?" in a quick sentence, it's two words: we enable business. And what that really means to us is really having a program that effectively addresses the combined issues of security, preparedness, risk, survivability. And we do that by anticipating disruptions, adapting to events, which creates lasting value. A lot of our customers now, when they come to us and they say, "We trust your product, but what we want to know is, are you going to be able to deliver that product in this crazy world that we live in all the events that are occurring?" Especially we're getting those questions after the pandemic, or as Russia invades Ukraine. Now we have the situation in Israel. Companies want to know that while we trust your what you provide to us, we need to trust that you're going to be able to provide that in a situation where there are disruptions. So I took by looking at that, we need tools in place that we can monitor globally what is occurring. And when I say globally, again, a lot of companies were focused on their facilities or their employees that are assigned to facilities, where now I have employees that are nowhere close to facilities. I myself work remote in Houston. The closest site that I have is Dallas, 350 miles away. I need to see where all my employees are, and I have a duty of care responsibility to those employees. So my focus has really turned on how do I protect my employees, provide them a safe and secure environment no matter where they are, whether they're on a site, whether they work remote, whether they're traveling, whether they're attending events. We have that duty of care responsibility wherever they are. And then the resilience program comes into where we build business continuity processes around employees, around groups of employees, because we may have a very critical employee that lives remotely in a country and they're there by themselves. We monitor the risk around that employee, because if we lose if there's a risk to that employee and they're unable to provide the services that they provide the company, we have to have a plan in place that we can quickly shift those responsibilities somewhere else. Something that my company just recently did. I have 14 employees in Israel, and when the situation occurred, we quickly assessed what is it we need to do to shift operations away from those employees to others, so our customers do not see any adverse effect around their operations. So as Jeremy's pulling up this map here, what I have done by utilizing this platform is I have layers that I open up one layer and it plots where all my employees are globally, and I have them color coded so I know what function they are providing. So I can quickly look to see, is this engineers that are an engineering group that's being affected, or what other organization they support. I also have where my sites are plotted, where we have major events, and where in some cases where our customers are located. And not only am I monitoring where all my our direct assets are, we have to monitor what else is going on in the world, because secondarily it could affect our operations. So this platform allows me that one look, that one visual aspect of where my assets are and what's happening around them.
And Jeff, I think one thing we talked about when you were mentioning how you protect your people around the world in these kinds of situations, the thing that kind of stood out to me that was really interesting was your workflow. That you had a process that was pretty straightforward. And I'm based in Lahaina, and I know you had people near the fire, but in terms of like your workflow and how you actually upload the data, it seemed pretty straightforward to me. I was like, wow, this seems like a good boilerplate process for how you achieve what you just described. Is that something maybe you could talk a little bit about in terms of how you actually create that within the tool?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to employees, I have about 6,000 employees, and then there's plus about 1,500 contingent workers that I track globally, and that's quite a large amount to put into the system here. But it's a simple conversion of spreadsheet to a KML file, and then it's a simple process. You just upload it into the system, and that's just adding a layer. Very quick, very easy to do. Sometimes I'll just do it manually. If I have a large event going on somewhere and I don't need to convert a KML file, I'll just use the drawing tools and I'll just drop a pin where that large event is. I'll do some information around that. We can even do geofencing around that event while the event is occurring, so I get immediately alerted if something occurs in a certain radius around that event. So there's different ways that I upload, but most of the things that I do upload are through KML files, and then I have quite a few bookmarks that are saved. Bookmarks are just exactly what they are. They're there's something of my, whether it's my favorite layers or it's things that I'm specifically tracking that are short term. So I personally use bookmarks for short-term tracking items, and I use KML files for things that are more permanent.
And just for the viewers, a KML file is a file you export from Google Maps, I believe, or Google Earth.
Right. I do the conversion into Google Earth.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just curious because it was new to me as well. So I was fascinated. Um, I think earlier too, you touched on something that, kind of hit home for me because, my background has partly been in manufacturing, global manufacturing. And during the pandemic, supply chain resilience, I'm not going to go into, everybody knows how bad that was, but having good policies in place or even having good intel was a differentiator because it allowed you to maintain your operations and keep production going when others could not. Um, do you see what you do? And we know your customers are already asking you about it, but is it also something that helps you differentiate, not just against your peers in business, but also when you're talking about your employees and their safety and, coming to work at Databricks? Is this something that actually extends itself beyond just the definition of what it means to keep people safe?
When you do people focused safety and security programs, which my program is it creates a security culture within the company. When I said earlier that, those of us that work in the non-cyber security area, we have to scrounge for basically everything that we get. We have to justify everything, and everything I justify is risk or threat based, which makes justification easier. But because my assets are or my resources are very limited, I have to look for what I call force multipliers. And I need programs such as DAE that acts as a force multiplier to my team, to where I can see many different things at once. So the fact that now we track employees, and I've been with this company now just 10 months, but we've implemented this already where we're tracking our employees globally. And the reaction you get when you reach out to a remote employee and you state to them, we see that there is a wildfire in your area. We're reaching out to see if you are safe. Do you need any assistance? The feedback that we get is just phenomenal. And what it creates is that safety and security culture where they embrace the safety and security program. So all my employees become a force multiplier to me because they see what we really care about. A lot of companies forget about the remote employees. They don't track what's going on around them. See what's happening right now with the multiple demonstrations that are occurring because of the conflict in Israel, and being able to communicate to those employees, you have a demonstration going on in your area. We advise that you avoid the area. Again, the feedback is, wow, I was going downtown. Thank you so much for letting us know. My family was able to avoid this. Again, it's all about preventing things from occurring, and that's what we're trying to do. The best security programs are when you get questioned, do we really need you? Because nothing happens. My favorite answer always is, do you think nothing's happening because we have things in place? And so to answer your question, it creates a culture that people do embrace. And when they do embrace that level of culture, that's that value add that employees get, that they do feel safe when they're conducting business for our company.
Yeah, it's a great story, Jeff. And I know personally when even the simplest gesture from my employer on, making sure that I'm safe and protected always felt really good. But never did I see anything to the level of what you're doing. It was generally, generalized bulletins, that went out to everybody in the company, no matter where you were in the world. But still, just even something like that felt like they at least cared a little bit. I kind of
There,
want to.
yeah,
Oh,
a
please go
very,
ahead.
if I make, Jeremy, I'm sorry, but it is a very important tool, especially for our travelers too, because when we have employees traveling to countries that are unknown to them, that they're in a new culture. They need to know that if something happens, we're going to be there for them, that we can help them prevent things from occurring. And the tool here does provide us that advanced information, so we know what mitigation measures we need to provide to our travelers, such as should we avoid using public transportation and get them secure ground transportation. We've identified areas of cities, and we will provide maps to our travelers saying, while you're in this city, avoid these areas because they're high risk areas, avoid using this type of transportation. And we pull all this information off of this platform.
That's a great point you make, because I was talking to the director of operations at the PDC, Aaron Huey, and we were talking about uh, Hurricane Otis that occurred in Acapulco. And she kind of said something similar to what you're describing, which is part of the reason why those things can be so catastrophic in those kinds of areas is because you have such a large concentration of people who are not from there. You have
Mhm.
tourists that are from there. They may not speak the language. They do not know the customs. They do not know where to go. It could, and obviously that's a negative force multiplier, but it compounds the problem in a way where you start to have a really big issue. And I think that that's important what you called out, which is, yeah, when you're traveling, if something bad happens, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, right? That can create a lot of anxiety in the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, obviously you become trapped or you can't figure out how to get to safety. So that's really interesting. Um, I did want to go back to kind of like the foundation of what I would consider like this space. You're an expert. You've been doing this for years. Um, you kind of intuitively know how to not just execute, but to find new opportunities to scale. But for the casual observer or somebody who is not as familiar with this space, you know, what are some ways to start to chip away and take small steps towards maybe building a business continuity practice or starting to build procedures, even if it's just a team within a company that does have a background in this area, getting together and really trying to think about what does it mean to start to develop programs like you have? Like, where would be a good place for them to start to think about this?
My experience is to make sure everything that you approach is threat based. There's we've got to get away from the cookie cutter concept of security and look at different areas and identify what are the threats, what are the vulnerabilities for those areas. And then when you approach things threat based, one of my favorite things to do is walk towards senior management and say, we have this risk. Here are our vulnerabilities. These are the mitigation measures it's going to take to reduce those vulnerabilities. Do you want us to move forward, or are you willing to accept that risk? And a lot of people aren't willing to accept the risk. So you are able to get a lot of things done, and you're able to justify and really not only for yourself justify what are the right mitigating measures for the risk, but also for the company justify the resources needed to mitigate those risks. As we're all aware, there are some risks that you're not going to eliminate risk. But that's where the continuity and the organizational resilience program comes into play. For example, you can't eliminate natural hazards, but what you can do is properly prepare for them. How are our offices properly prepared to minimize damage, to minimize things? Are we actually located in the right areas? That's what I love about this tool is the different layers that it provides you, to where if we're thinking of opening a new office, where do we want to open it? Where do we want to avoid? What are all the different hazard levels? Everything from earthquakes to even volcanoes to is there a flood threat there? Is there a tsunami threat? And we take all of that information and we pull it all together. You know, in those areas or in those things that you cannot eliminate risk, because the only way to eliminate it is to completely avoid it, which is not probable. That's where you have your business continuity plans. Those plans are there that we recognize that there's going to be risks, and if the probability is high or the likelihood is high that that risk may occur, what would be the impact? The business continuity plans minimizes the impact because you're prepared to either move operations, move people, do what you have to do in the event that situation is to occur.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into my next question, which is, your leadership team. I know you work closely with them, but how do they consume this information from you? I know you've shared with me at great length the various ways that you communicate risk and the overall impact, but what are some great ways to actually, talk to your leadership team about these sorts of things, and what kind of tools do you like to use?
Visual tools are the best. Something like what you're showing right here. What I would, I'm going to step back a little bit and talk a little bit more about when I was with my previous company. My previous company's headquarters was in Fort Lauderdale, so we were very, very in tune to the Atlantic Basin hurricane season. And I believe it was Hurricane Dorian was the huge one that came across and kind of lingered off the coast of Fort Lauderdale. And all the questions that were going on at that time, we need to shut down the site. We need to shut down the site. And when we did go to that level of shutdown, it was a complete shutdown, shutting down all systems, everything we had. So it was very costly and time consuming. We had to move operations to our secondary area over in Bangalore. Very disruptive to do. So they would look to me and say, you need to tell us when the threat is close enough to shut it down. Dorian sat off the coast of Fort Lauderdale, about 70 miles off the coast. We never shut down. And it was basically because of the information I got off of this tool. I was able to, look at where the storm was, do the measurements. I love the measurement tools they have here because it actually gives you mileage, looking at what is the wind impact, where is the storm tracking, the information that was being put out on the alerts that I was getting off of DAE. I never gave we need to shut down a recommendation, and we stayed open, and it saved the company a lot of money, time, and effort. We also recommended to our employees that were in South Florida, do not evacuate, because we watched where the storm was going, and it was going up the coast, and we did not want them evacuating going up the coast with the storm. So it was able to, by utilizing that data that we got off of here, it was able to us to influence operations. And fortunately, that storm was, I think I was 4 or 5 years in with that company that we utilized this data so often that there was that level of confidence by the executive team at that time to take those recommendations.
Yeah, it's trying to find a cyclone. Fortunately, we've had such an active year. I'm kind of in awe that there isn't an active cyclone right now.
Yeah, if Jeremy, if you do go over to the map layers, there is it gives you can click on the history area, and I believe response events, disaster response events, and it will give you some information on those. But
yep, that's actually a good point, because there are a lot of larger international crises, right, that are more actively managed. Here's Sally in 2020, hazard information. But yes, you can obviously go back in history and see the impact of some of these things. And I believe you were talking about the estimated wind impacts, Jeff, where it can kind of give you a sense of, the overall scale and of impact the storm has in certain areas and regions, right?
it was very important to look at when they said that the hurricane, or tropical storm force winds extended out to 175 miles. I would use the drawing tool and I'd extend it out 175 miles, and that would show me what employees, what assets, what sites may be impacted by tropical storm level winds. Very important for us in my previous company, because we had a site in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and it just seemed like storms would always come by Puerto Rico, and we were able to draw out and determine whether Puerto Rico was going to be truly impacted or not.
Yeah, that's amazing, that you're using it to that level of sophistication, and obviously that's great because you can kind of make it contextual to what you need to know versus just. I think a lot of times we get the question of, well, how's this different than maybe what I can get off um, NOAA or the Weather Channel. And I think the big difference is that not only do you get some of the models and things like that, but you can also make sure it's relevant to you and your business, right?
Absolutely. And because we do upload those KML files, we can see how it's, how the impact's going to be. Yes, there's a lot of tools out there, but when you have limited resources on your team, when I spoke about having a force multiplier to me means I have a platform that can provide me multiple sources of information, because I don't have the resources for my team to be reaching out to several different things or monitoring several different other websites to be able to determine what risks are out there. Some of the other tools that are on here that I absolutely love, and again, looking back at my previous company, is when we did do evacuations, say out of Florida, we would use the camera tool, and we would use the cameras up and down the different highways, and we would tell employees, don't take this evacuation route because it's wall-to-wall car. Take this evacuation route. So we were getting to the point that we were able to provide very specific information because of the camera tools that are available. The other tool that I use extensively is the media tool. If there's an event that happens, say in Madrid, Spain, and we're getting that broad notification, normally local media provides you a little bit more detail, or it's more up to date. Utilizing the media tool, I'm able to go into that local media and get that information before it hits any other larger media. So a lot of great tools on here that you're able to utilize if you just get creative. This is such an innovative tool that I've been involved with it really from almost its onset, and I've had the opportunity to grow with the tool. And I think one of the best things about my interaction with you folks is you listened to what my needs were, and you were willing to see, can we make the tool now do this? Can we add this layer in there? I have suggested certain layers that I use, such as the State Department travel advisories. You were able to add that layer in there. So now I don't even need to go to the State Department advisory. I just pull it up on this tool. So it really has become that true force multiplier that I needed, especially now that I'm with this new company, Databricks, and I'm now again building out a new program, building out a new team. I have to have this type of tool to provide that level of safety and security to my employees globally.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jeff. And I think you raise a good point, which is like most things that you do strategically, um, it's the combination of information, and it can be different every time you look at it, but having it all there so you can get the right kind of context and the situational awareness is, obviously a tremendous value. And, I pulled up one of the cameras here in Florida, all that's real time. And obviously, like you said, if you can see with your own eyes what is happening in a given location, that it without being there, um, that's tremendously useful. And this is a global product, and so there's all sorts of regions throughout the world where you can get that kind of awareness. Um,
Yeah, you know, we started this conversation about what is the best way to present it, and it's the visual. I mean, I take screenshots of this system all the time and use it as take a look at what we have. Um, a, a, a good example with my new company, our headquarters is in San Francisco. We have a couple of major events going on in San Francisco next week, but guess what else is going on next week in San Francisco is the APEC. You know, you got all of the Asia Pacific leaders coming in for a huge meeting there. So we're going to have country leaders, including our president, from I believe it's 21 or 22 different countries. So they're already talking about road closures and diversions and things. So what we did is we pulled up the map here, and we were able to use the tool to identify what areas are going to be closed, and then shared that with our employees and shared that with those that are traveling there for our event, that these are going to be the disruptions that are going on in that area next week during this international event.
and I'm curious too, like, you know, there are other types of like infrastructure layers here. And you mentioned earlier, you know, being able to route people to the right places to, um, you know, if something like that happens, you know, do you also, you know, leverage these sorts of layers for planning and, you know, just making sure travelers and things like that are being directed to the right areas?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
The ones that you have pulled up right here on global layers, and you've got airports checked off. But if you look there, there's also hospitals, there's emergency operations centers, clinics. Anytime we have an event and my team does the risk assessment for the event, this is the tool we use. And just by clicking on that, we're able to see what are the closest airports, what are the closest hospitals, emergency centers, where are the things that we're going to need to be able to support our employees. Also, very important when we're looking at site selection, when we're determining should we open a site or can we open a site in these areas. You know, my team now not only provides here's the risks, you know, the safety security risks, but here's also the infrastructure that's around it. How close are the airports? How close are the train stations? How close are all those different things that helps our executive team decide what is the best area for us to focus in. But these tools here, absolutely, these are very critical to us anytime we do an assessment of you know, where we have events, or even for our travelers. We monitor very closely when our travelers go to what we consider high risk countries. Any country that is listed level 3 is considered by the U.S. State Department. We consider it is a high risk because it's a reconsider travel. We provide them all this information in their pre-travel security briefing of where's the closest hospital, what's the closest airport, here's the airport you're flying in, what are the alternate airports, all those different things that we're able to pull off of this program.
yeah, that's awesome. And it wouldn't be a at-home webinar without a dog barking, thank God. I was worried that we wouldn't get that one in, but we checked that box. You know, as we're getting kind of closer to time, I just want to check and just make sure, Emily, that you know, we don't have any questions from the group online. I do not know where my chat window would be. Oh, there would be my chat window. Yeah, I'll take that as a no. Um,
Sorry, took me a hot second to unmute, but nope, no questions so far.
okay. Um, yeah, and you know, for anybody on the line, you know, that please ask questions. I mean, Jeff is obviously an amazing resource, and you know, just to be able to pick his brain, I think is you know, such a luxury for us to do at this point in time. But I will let people gather their thoughts if they do want to ask questions. But in case, you know, I kind of wanted to wrap up here and really talk about, you know, some of the ideas that we kind of talked about, which is that, you know, the modern business, to me, if I hear you correctly, Jeff, not only needs to be very involved in understanding how to operate in an uncertain world and environment, no matter what you want to call that, resilience and business continuity, risk management. It's not just something you need to do. It's something that's good for your business. It's something that helps you be strategically competitive, and it helps you build a good culture within your company, and it helps you build more, um, safety through the whole enterprise versus just it's owned by a few people. And I think that's an incredible idea, especially given, we all do want to watch out for each other, right? Especially our colleagues, and we want to feel that we're watched out for. So, that was one of my big takeaways when talking to you. Like, what are your thoughts, in closing on that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I keep using the phrase force multiplier, but that's what security is all about. Is when it comes down to it, it's about our people. And as long as we continue to put our people as our number one asset, everything else will be taken care of. Because when you talk about taking care of your people while they're in your facility, of course you secure your facility and you make your facility safe. But we have to think about the people that work from home. We still have a duty of care, responsibility for their safety and security. But what it also has become, and it's what's always a thrill to me, is when the light clicks on to our sales and marketing team, when they realize they can market our resilience. That they use it as a differentiator. Not many companies that market their product will forthright talk about the resiliency of their company to be able to deliver that product. And that's the differentiator. And that's where security, that's where business continuity, organizational resilience becomes more of a profit, helping the profit margin, rather than, everybody always says we're an expense. We don't help. No, we do. We contribute to that ability to win contracts. And I love when people come to my sites and say, let's take a look at the security, because the physical security is the most visible aspect of it. And then when they talk to our employees on how they feel about things, those are the differentiators that makes a difference. So it's really getting the executive team to understand that we're here, number one, for our employees and keep them safe and secure. But this is how we contribute to the growth of the company as well. By being able to, or as my team's motto is, enable business. It allows us to continue to conduct business no matter what adverse events, no matter what occurs. We're able to continue to provide our customers with the services that they expect from us.
Yeah, and I think that's super relatable, because I'm sure anybody can point to an example of how disruption got in the way of serving your customers, whether it was minor or major, because you were not prepared or you were surprised by something. So I think that's an incredible idea that I think a lot of people, can take away and obviously relate. I think the other thing that you call out is that, and I think you described this as, what is the intent of the security? When you define your strategy and how you're going to kind of come up with your plan or how you're going to adapt and change, you need to figure out what those goals are for your business and how you might approach them. And that may not be the same for everybody, but certainly it also can't be cookie cutter, right? You can't just say, hey, this works for me in America, so therefore I'm going to apply the same thinking in China. I thought that was a pretty powerful idea as well.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to the health and safety program, because my team is responsible for that, which I'm always been one that believes health and safety and security should be combined, because they do complement each other so greatly. But on the health and safety side of it, you cannot have a cookie cutter type concept, because each country has different regulatory requirements that we have to meet. And a lot of companies don't realize that you have that health and safety requirement for your remote workers. Your companies are responsible to ensure that their remote workers are working in a workstation at home that will not affect their health. If you think of the pandemic, look at where we evolved from that. When everybody immediately went to work from home, we were on web conferences and people are sitting at their kitchen tables, sitting on their couch. Now most people have an office set up because of that situation. And a lot of that, my company then at that time, we quickly went into an ergonomic program, and to be able to make sure that they're working well from their home. And again, going back to DAE, we track that program through DAE. Just when I say I color code my icons of my employees, some of my layers are who have we completed and who have we not, and that way we can visually show management rather than show numbers. We visually show them. Look at all the reds; those are all done. All the greens, or I'm sorry, the greens are done. The reds are the ones that we need to complete. So a lot of different things that you can use this tool for.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks, Jeff. And, you spent a lot of time on this call, obviously, saying some really great things about the product. And I encourage anybody that's listening, to visit our website, DisasterAWARE.com. There's a free trial. You can try it out for yourself. It takes less than 30 minutes to get into the system. It's all automated. But, just these tools are powerful, whether it's ours, which we think is obviously one of the most powerful, or other tools that are out there. I think you really need to start thinking about what Jeff has shared with us today, which is, these are very important things that your business needs to be involved in, but they're also strategically and competitively important as well. And we know that the world, unfortunately, is getting more and more uncertain, especially as we work more internationally. So I think these will be must-haves going forward. And I think in order to protect people safely and to give them the kind of security that they need to have while they work, you'll need tools like this to do those sorts of things. So I encourage you to visit our site to learn more. This is the kind of data not just Jeff uses. It's also the same data that the Department of Defense uses. This is a partnership with the Pacific Disaster Center. So this is a very powerful tool. And I think you'll find that it's got a lot of information that can help you understand risk. I don't like to be the last person to talk, especially when I got somebody here like Jeff, but I do want to say, Jeff, thank you again, as always, for being so supportive and passionate about this area. And if you just had a closing thought for your peers on just something you think is important or resources they can tap into, please, I would love it if you could share something with the people listening.
I'll just end it this way. You said it right, peers. What I love about the security industry is all of us that are responsible for our company's health, safety, and security of employees. We're not competitors. It doesn't matter who we work for. We all have the same goal. So I say that because I reach out to a lot of my peers all the time with questions, suggestions. What do you recommend? I want to offer that to anybody on this call as well, that if you do contact me directly, I would be able to show you a little bit more of what actually my company is using this product for. More of in a more private environment, I would be able to show you a little bit more so you can get an idea. But if you have any other questions about the DisasterAWARE Enterprise program, please call me, because I stated earlier, I actually got on board with them when they were in their infancy, just getting the program started, and watched them evolve. And I will end it just by saying they are so open to adding to this program and listening to their customers and listening to the needs of the security industry, that you give them an idea and their engineers run with it. And that's what I love best about using this program. So please contact me if you have any questions. I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm willing to share anything with you at a later time.
Well, thanks so much, Jeff, for your time. Again, I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you again for your service. And I'm going to wrap it up here, and we will be sending the recording out shortly. But thank you so much for all you who attended, and Jeff, aloha.
Thank you.